Hi Ashutosh, how are you doing?
Doing great, Rajiv. Good morning. Good to see you today. And really good to know the work you're doing.
Absolutely. Good morning. Welcome to the event. It's a pleasure to have you. How have you been all along since we spoke last time?
I think these are times when everything is morphing, right? So, work and the passion outside work. So, there's so much going on. And I think it's same for everyone. So, idea is to keep both parts going together without falling off one horse and managing it well so far.
Good, good.
I'm
Family's
sure
doing good.
I'm family's doing good. Thank you. Thank you for asking. How about you? All is good
All
at your
well,
end?
all well. So far, so good. Just that the COVID numbers seems to be rising in a couple of cities, so I don't know how things are. So in India, at least, people are really confused if the second wave would really come in or would not come in. We all don't know, but we are back to a regular normal life. So how is it in that part of the land?
Hmm. It is getting better. I think the one thing about like about this place is that Dubai, the governance is, and not to say India governance is not good, but being a slightly different scale, the governance is really, really in control. And while it goes up, but they bring it back very quickly. So good so far. And the vaccinations are also almost most of the way through. So that should hopefully bring a lot of relief to everyone.
Super, super, fantastic. Such a pleasure to have you on the event. Before we get started and talk on this powerful book, let me have the honor of introducing you to the audience.
That's very kind of you.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whichever part of the world you would be sitting while you would be listening to the guest of the day. All of you were part of Leaders in Library Season 1, which had 33 global leaders coming and talking on 22 powerful books. Season 2 has 40 leaders coming and talking on 40 exclusive powerful books from the world of C-suite, LNOD, HR, authors, global coaches. So it's a beautiful set of leaders who have joined season 2. And today we have yet another guest, Mr. Ashutosh Sinha, Group Head HR Landmark Group, joining us all the way from Dubai. I'm very excited to talk to him because he's again one of the guests who is an author himself, and we are going to talk on the book that he has written. So, such a pleasure to have you, Ashutosh. I had a couple of authors in season 1 and season 2, so I'm very excited to talk to you on your own book.
Pleasure is mine, Rajiv. I think you're doing an amazing thing out there. When you told me about the concept, I was so very impressed. I've
Thank you.
not heard of many concepts like this. So, great work at what you're doing.
Glad to
Absolutely
know that.
amazing.
Glad to know that. It's always lovely to connect with another book lover. So Ashutosh comes with 25 plus years of experience across India, Middle East, US, has worked across consumer, retail, IT, multiple industries. Is also a mentor with startups, a speaker on UN and other global platforms and forums. Today is an author. And what I liked in the conversation I had with him last time is one thing came out as he was narrating his story of the leadership journey and how he ended up being an author. Uh, One thing that came across to me, and let me tell this to you, Ashutosh, I don't know if somebody else has told this or am I the first person telling this. You come across as somebody for whom contributing back to the community seems to be one of the key driving force or seems to be the flow or the mojo for you. That's what I
And
could grasp.
you got it 100% there, Rajiv. What keeps me, my sense of purpose in life right now is, and I'm sure it's for many others, but for me, definitely it is two things. One is insane hunger to grow other people
Hmm.
and people who are around me and be able to contribute to add some value to themselves or their business to make sure they do well. And second is exactly like you said, ability to ensure that in the larger sense of it,
Mm.
the community as such, the
Mm.
economy as such,
Mm.
does not affect people in such a way that they cannot depend on their innate skills
Right.
to take it forward. So it's kept me going, and I really like doing that.
Superb, superb. Such a pleasure. Now, beyond all these accolades that I spoke about, audience, ignore all this. I'm sure the man has done it and been there. What makes me so happy to have him is he's also an equally crazy maverick book lover like I am. So, thank you so much, Ashutosh, for accepting the invitation and welcome on board.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Yes, there's a little bit of collection of my books here. They're much more in my back in library, but I love books. They have been my teacher.
Superb, superb, lovely. So let's get started. I'm just rubbing my hands to create a little bit of heat. And I would love to start with the first question. I'm going to take you back, rewind your life, and go back to your college days and school days and ask you the first question. So tell us, Ashutosh, how early did books happen in your life? Were you a school going boy or a college going boy or an executive joining the corporate with a lot of aspiration? How did it happen?
So reading and writing seem to have come to me at a very early age. I don't know how, but way back in the early school days when I was growing up,
Mm,
the part of the world where I was growing up, Chandigarh, it was riddled with some level of terrorism and things like that point of time.
mm,
And there were some incidents, and because of which the poet inside me, the child poet, grew. And I started writing in newspapers as early as I remember Indian Express and a couple of other papers in the local papers.
uh-huh,
I never thought that'll become a hunger. The book ultimately, which changed things for me, was Richard Bach's Jonathan Livingstone Seagull.
wow.
I still have that book in my library. I love it. I probably read it almost once every year. You won't believe it. I read it probably for almost 20 times by now. Whenever I find time in between my career trajectory, and it's so inspirational for me
True.
that it's kept me going in the direction of the hunger of finding more books which can just keep teaching me. So that's where it started somewhere.
Lovely, lovely. And thanks for reminding that book. It's a thin book, but it's a powerful, powerful book. In fact, I'm reminded of one guest who came and picked up Who Moved My Cheese? And I said,
Hmm,
wow, after so many years, somebody is picking up such a simple yet a powerful book to talk on. So Seagull is again such a lovely, lovely book, isn't it?
absolutely, absolutely. I guess I always believe that less complicated the concepts are, books can be great teachers, and more complicated we make them, it turns away audiences to an extent, unless you are a voracious reader. So it should be for everyone as much as possible, and of course, to a few as well. So,
Lovely,
yes,
lovely.
absolutely agree with you. Absolutely agree
That
with you.
that's how it tells me also that how you ended up writing this book, which is less than 200 pages and makes it simple, a pocket carry kind of a stuff, and makes it very
Yeah.
interesting for people with powerful insights across the pages. So before we delve into the book that you've written, uh, let me ask you, as you started with Seagull and you must have read very, very many books over the years, how do you see books have played a very significant role in your expansion as a leader, as a human being? Tell us a little about that. That could help young leaders to go back and pick up this habit of reading.
It's a great question. It's a very good question. I've always had three mentors in life.
Mm-hmm.
One is being my father, till the time he was and I was with him. I lost him somewhere on the way. Second is being few mentors who have been teachers at different point of time, my guides, guardians, beacons of light in my career.
Mm.
And third, always has been books. And I keep the books on the top right quadrant of my learning stage, because every time I read a book, I realize I have to reread it. It's almost like whether you're reading even a scripture for that matter. I'm a
Mm.
big fan of reading traditional text as well,
Ah.
or whether you're reading a book, of any modern writer or medieval writer, or even something goes as back old as Andrew Carnegie's Napoleon Hill,
Mm.
kind of anecdotes. Um, Inspirational genre or non-inspirational or fiction, when you read it once more, that's a time when you really get the gist out of it sometimes, especially if you really liked the book in
So,
the first go. So I believe that's what they have been. They have been my teachers. They have helped me fill notes for myself.
mm.
And I think for a long time, I'm not going to change that habit. At least it looks for now.
Now that you are an author, it's not going to go away any which way. It's become your second skin any which ways, isn't it?
No,
Absolutely.
tremendous respect for all
True,
authors. They're doing great
true.
work.
True, true, true. I mean, I completely understand what you're saying. The same book, when you read it through your journey, so let's say you've read it 6 years back and reading it 7, 8 years back later, you get so much more out of the same book because your life has moved on. You're in a different path of journey of your own. So the context is completely different.
Yeah,
And hence learnings are far different.
absolutely, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah,
100% agree with you.
yeah, lovely, lovely. So I'm so happy. I'm going to talk on the book and I have it handy with me, and I thought I should show it. So, audience, you are listening to the author of the book himself. Ashutosh has written a powerful, powerful book. The name of the book is Breakthrough. It's a simple, insightful, 200 pages, easy run through kind of a book with powerful tools that can help all of you pause and reflect. And I would want to say that in a boxing bout, the pause before the punch is always the most powerful. And I think use this book as a powerful pause for you to punch back in your own career. That's how I want to put this book as. It's beautiful, very simple. And one particular framework that I'm going to talk about with Ashutosh here made me reflect on my current role as an entrepreneur. And I sat on a A3 page and tried to put the framework into my current context of business that I'm in. And it helped me, Ashutosh. Once I'm able to finish that A3 and bring a framework to it, I'll share that with you later. So it was very interesting for me. I said I should do that before I get onto the call. So thank you so much for introducing me to this beautiful framework. I'm going to get started with this. What inspired you to write this book? You've been successful, you've been at the helm of affairs, you've traveled across the globe. A lot of people write books nowadays. Was there a logical conclusion or a destination, or was there a drive to write the book?
In some ways, this book is my life's work. Not that it's my only book. I'm on to my next book also right now, but it is a culmination of 7 years of research. And let me take you a quick story on how and where that research started.
Please.
Like you said, I have been very fortunate, blessed that though I'm not born necessarily with a silver spoon, but I got the right opportunities, the right mentors on the way. And I reached at a very young age of, I think, 35, 36, when I was at the helm of becoming director for HR for a very large organization. Great compensation, everything going good for me. And then on, I moved to another company, and I reached one of the best consulting firms in the world,
Mm,
where I was again hobnobbing with the best of minds. I was both in India and the US and other parts of the world,
mm,
and also speaking at the right places and having all the material things which you want in life, the
sure.
house, the car, the things which go along with it. And then something started clicking in my head that while all this is going well,
Mm,
there is something in me which is demanding more, and I'm not completely happy just playing golf.
mm-hmm,
There is something which is saying that I am resting on laurels which have not yet been made.
mm-hmm,
And I started calling up a lot of mentors,
mm-hmm.
CEO friends, CXO friends, executives who've been on the career path. And I said, has this happened to you? I'm just about touching 40 and, it's happening to me. And they said, oh, you asked a very interesting question. I've been through this. And then someone else I called up and they said, I've been through this as well in different ways, but they have all
Right.
realized been through that. And then I started calling some of my, I've hired about, Rajiv, over 30 to 40,000 people, or maybe more, much more in my life at various points of time in my career, at
Mm,
various career stages. And out of those, I must have hired about 2.5 to 3,000 business heads and CEOs in the world and across the world. And I called up about 300 of them,
mm,
methodically over the years to start my research and interview them, and also based it on certain existing research, secondary
wow.
research from great, authors and research paper academicians
Mm,
and positive psychologists. And what I learned was that there is a point of time in career where the bus you're riding on, the plane you're riding on, hits a wall, and
mm,
you start asking the essentialism question that what is beyond?
mm,
Because you've been suddenly running, you're living a career, most likely, most people, data says about 71% people make a career based on what others want them to make the career on, not what they genuinely wanted in their heart to be.
Mm.
And that's the time you start asking that, okay, I've got some of these things in order in my life. And that could be at, earlier it used to be the mid-age blues, also some people call it, used to be
Yeah.
55, then it moved to 45, now it's moved to 35. And I think as much as I'm researching, I'm realizing it's now going down to 30s.
Is it so?
And yeah, it's heading down. The work-related stress, the CEOs who are, I hate to put it that way, but dying on a treadmill, or who are getting lost on a bus ride to some place because they just want to get off the corporate career and do something
Mm.
else. So
Mm.
the stress is coming back in a major way to younger age. And you don't have to be a CEO to be under stress. Even a executive who's the middle of the career are getting hit by stress of work, economy, environment.
Mm.
Because there's a WUI index, World Uncertainty Index, which says that the number of frequency of changes of the world economy over the years, and you can check it out yourself on WUI, has increased almost 20x than it used to be about 50 years back. And
Mm.
that's going to continue to go up. So, coming back to my story, the point is that I realized the world talks about happiness at work. There are books on theories on joy at work, be happy at
Mm.
work. It sounds very flippant to me. There's no practical solution,
Mm.
which I felt that one of time, which really talked about how do you cross the bridge to become someone who can
Mm.
truly start loving your work?
Right.
How can you start connecting to a deeper sense of purpose? And
Mm.
that's where my framework came in place. So I developed two things. One was a career thermometer, which is available free on my website as well,
Mm.
where people can take an online situation assessment and check out how are they feeling in the career. But the second was this important piece around the framework, which said, how do you really transgress and understand where you are
Mm.
and connect yourself back to a career which is defined by a deeper sense of purpose, and yet you make
Right.
money out of it.
Right.
So that's the story where it hit me and it came through. I never thought of writing a book. I kept researching for a while, and then about last year sometime, I met someone who actually proposed that why don't you put this in a book? And that's how more of a academician or a leader became an author. So that's my transition to an author.
Fantastic. So all thank you to that gentleman or the person who asked you to nudged you and pushed you to write the book, else this would have just remained as great thoughts in the paper. So thank you for writing this. I can tell you without any exaggeration, Ashutosh, I've read Mojo, I've read Flow, I've read multiple such books that talk about finding the sense of purpose, whether it is Leaders Eat Last or whether it is Start With Why. Pick up any book. It's very evidently coming out that purpose driven individuals stay long, consistently, constantly, continuously, and keep growing because there's an innate happiness that is erupting in them. But this framework kind of helps all these readings to put it into a box
Yes,
and plan a structure for your life. I think that's the
completely.
beauty of the framework that I liked. It sits
I
in my framework, it sits into my son's. So I asked him to do that. He's 13 years.
hmm,
Right? So I said, put it into this and just check how it is. Then I tried it with another friend of mine who's also in the space of LNOD. It sits everywhere, which means such framework helps you to not just go across and get tangential in your thought processes, but able to bring all those arrows going all over and bring it to one concrete thought process and then move
yes.
from there. So that was very, very interesting. So thanks for writing the book. It's going to be really helpful. And I'm glad that I had you on this event. And if through this channel we are able to make many young leaders pick this book and read, I think both our purposes would be met, Ashutosh.
I think you put it beautifully, Rajiv. Absolutely. First of all, it'll be a great pleasure if readers across the world are able to connect to it and it changes something for them. And there's already I've received, I think I've received thousands of messages, I must tell you, Rajiv, from as far as Mexico, France, US, India, Singapore, where people have written to me genuinely and honestly how they have felt and changed their thinking on work and life, and put them into a certain context. So absolutely agree with you, and you really summed it up beautifully. I think you probably summed it to the best so far I've heard. So very nicely put.
Thank you. Thank
Um,
you so much.
and I'll tell you, the framework itself is hinged on a cornerstone, which is very, very core and rock solid. And that's why it makes it powerful. The quadrants of Q is for the quadrants of life, Q.
Yeah.
And whether we look at our traditional text, as I call it, from Hinduism, spiritualism, Buddhism, or if you go to the Bible, if you
Mm.
go to the Quran, or whether we look at modern text of talking around aspects of life which are based on mid-career crisis by authors like Barbara,
Mm.
or many others. The one point which clicks completely is you
Mm.
can't apply the same formula for
Mm.
success at every stage of your life.
Very true.
You can't have the same sense of purpose at every stage of your life. It has to change, it has to evolve.
Yeah.
And the idea of the framework is to be able to find that, unlock that secret sauce at the stage of life you are at, and be able to convert that into something which is a plan of action, which can connect you immediately to a deeper core root inside you.
Oh,
And
yes.
that makes it so powerful. So that was a little definition of further on what you said, but thanks
Yes.
for
Oh,
putting it
yes.
that way.
Anyway, absolutely, I completely understand. So, very, very interesting concepts, and 45 minutes is not enough for me to do justice to this entire book. Yet, I thought we'll talk on four, five things which caught my attention, and I thought this would be of great value for young leaders, and they can go and expand their thought process by reading through the pages of the book. The first one, which was very interesting for me, is what you call as the Bermuda Triangle effect, and you very clearly say that you need to start focusing on this.
Yes.
And as early as you are able to do that, it's good for you. So explain this a little more for the young leaders.
So it's an analogy. If you look at someone like you or me or any leader out there making
Mm,
or even a homemaker for that matter, I'm
mm,
talking
mm,
about if he or she is making or working on a home
mm,
along with a spouse or a partner who is making a living,
mm.
anyone for that matter, you are the pilot of a plane
Sure.
or a co-pilot of a Boeing plane, let's imagine,
Mm,
with passengers in the seat with yourself.
mm.
And you need to ensure that they are riding safe with you because you have all that cling to you.
Correct.
As changes of life move on,
Mm,
that plane gets loaded with baggage of mortgages, medical bills,
mm,
education loans, health hazards, economic hazards, job hazards, and so on and so forth.
mm,
And as you keep flying that plane, sometime you stop noticing the little drops of water which start trickling down on the window of the plane as a
mm. Yep.
pilot,
Yep.
because you're so blindsided with the reality of the people and the passengers in the plane, that
Mm,
what's happening to them, are they being looked after, are they getting good service,
mm.
because you think you're an autopilot, you're going to land anyway in the destination you set yourself on.
True. True.
But what you miss out on, that there's a Bermuda Triangle on the way. And the Bermuda Triangle effect is when your plane starts getting those raindrops and lightning streaks across the sky, which you fail to notice, and
Mm,
you fail to take timely action, the early warning systems don't kick in. And my humble request to young readers, young leaders, both, is that if they notice, for example, another analogy, if they're going on a high speed roadway, an
mm,
Autobahn or something, and they miss a traffic flash sign, it's time to recorrect themselves and recorrect the compass. So the
mm,
idea is to slow down, pause, and look at, are you heading into the Bermuda Triangle, or do you want to do something about it and change course and
mm.
rechart your flight course?
Right.
So in my research, what I realized was that some really good, stellar people who were doing so well in their career suddenly came to a place where they didn't know what hit them.
Mm,
And that awakening was a little too late.
mm,
The plane was already caught in this whirlwind. And because of that, it was a very bumpy ride. They had passengers with them who were also caught in the same plane with them. And that made it very stressful.
mm, mm.
So when you board a plane, for example, even as a passenger, the
Right.
first thing they tell you is, in case of emergency, wear your oxygen mask before you
Correct.
put it on your fellow passenger. And it's the same strategy in a different way, that we got to be sure that we are watching all telltale signs.
Mm,
And that's what in the book I managed to push through certain key early warning systems such people can watch out for
yeah.
to ensure they don't hit the Bermuda Triangle of their careers, if
Very
that
true.
makes sense.
It absolutely makes sense, and so I love the water trickling on the window pane of the pilot, because it can make it so hazy for the pilot, isn't it? And it can be
Yes.
catastrophic for himself, herself, and the passengers behind as well.
Yes.
Uh,
Yes.
I mean, I'm just thinking that, did I have that clarity when I was in that young age? I don't think so. I'm an engineer, but today sitting and running a leadership consulting house. I mean, in no words these two have any connections. Besides the fact that my dad is very proud that I'm the first engineer of my family. I don't know what it did to me. I don't know what it did to my career. Uh, Probably I was also in that haze when I was young. If young leaders can get it early, it's so beautiful, because the rest of the life would be so purpose driven, isn't it? And for
Completely.
all of us today, when we look back, we all have this feeling that if at all I had the clarity a couple of years back, if at all. That's a constant question of if at all, if at all, if at all. And if this book can
And
give that answer to the if at all to many young leaders, I think your purpose of writing the book is fulfilled.
and a very quick quip to that, Rajiv, we so agree on this that there are only two times in life when you can change things. I believe in
Mhm.
career. One is 35, next is 55.
Right,
Everything in between flashes by.
right.
The 20 years just go by. So that's point number one. The point two is the London Business School survey actually says that, and it's on the net when people can find it. 52% of youngsters felt in their 20s, late 20s, or even very early 30s, that they were never going to hit mid-career blues. Nothing's going to go wrong ever in their life. And 80% of executives in the late 40s and early 50s said, wish they had a second chance when they were 30s. So, it's very interesting if you look at those two data points,
True,
how they
true.
marry each other.
True, true, true. I love this. I've not heard anyone say this, that 35 and 55 are the two watershed moments in between everything just flashes off. You're actually very right, Very, very true. Very, very true. That's a very powerful learning. I'm going to keep that in mind. Beautiful. So let's get into the framework that will help people to probably start working on the Bermuda Triangle early on. Very powerful framework, the QAPA framework of yours. I'm not going to explain anything. You are the creator of that. I'm going to leave it to you. Explain us what this framework is all about.
Sure. Let me use an example to make it simpler over this conversation. So let's talk to a listener, let's say, who is right now listening to this and age of 32,
Mm,
right? And he or she is probably young to a mid-level rising star or executive
right.
doing okay to very good somewhere in the career in that range.
Mm,
And the point is exactly to a previous conversation is probably thinking that the three, four key elements of life about making more money, promotions, getting up there fast, beating someone else to the next job, and things like that on top of mind. It's important, exactly the same data point we said earlier in the conversation, for someone to pause and reflect and
mm,
to avoid hitting that Bermuda Triangle movement. And that background is very important for this conversation, this context, and this framework.
yeah.
The solution is to first understand what quadrant of life are you in. So Q stands for quadrant.
Mm,
And my job, which I gave to myself to make this framework was, like I said in the beginning of the conversation, to demystify it, to declutter it, make it very, very simple for people to understand a framework, not make it like a HR big jargon or something like
true,
that, which people can't take away.
true.
So Q is the quadrant of life. The four quadrants are natural four quadrants. And depending which quadrant of life, let's say the 32-year-old person is in the quadrant A,
Mm,
and or quadrant B, cusp of quadrant A and B in this case. And the person, that's the time is climbing like the cliff, like Tom Cruise with a lot of baggage on the back and a tall, steep learning curve, which is going at a pace, winds whistling by, things going around. And that's the time you want to reach to the top of the next cliff, before you get too tired. But it's important to that moment to understand that where are you in your career situation? Are
yeah.
you feeling equally energetic like you were 10 years back when you were 22? Is there something which is dropping the pace of your getting up from bed in the morning to go to work?
Mm,
Are you feeling any kind of boredom at work? Are you feeling jaded by people who you believe don't have the equal intellectual stamina?
Mm-hmm.
Are you being harangued by the fact that you are probably giving more than
Mm.
you are learning out of that work or job? And
Right.
things like that. There's some clear questions. And that's where my career thermometer comes in, that go and take the test, and you will exactly know in 5 minutes. I have a longer test also, but I have a 5 minute test, which is on my website, which can tell you which zone of your career are you in. So that's a Q. And A is exactly that assessment of that zone.
Mm.
And then when you assess this is the situation you're in, you need to know, because when you need to know yourself, the biggest mistake we make is we believe we know everything.
Mm.
We're a little bit like the ostrich in the sand with the head buried in the sand and say that, you know, we as humans tend to over index our capabilities
True.
most of the time. That's what research says. We tend to believe that we can cross the harrowing boulders and rocks and seas by
Mm.
ourselves, and nothing wrong in that bold spirit.
Mm.
But the idea is to make it pragmatic and practical. So A is that assess movement.
Very
And
true.
then you need to do a P, which is plan.
Mm.
And when you plan something with realities in mind,
Mm.
your core skills and strengths in mind, and also not what you feel you're good at, but what people have told you, not from now, but from childhood, what you're
Mm.
good at.
Mm.
Because when I do my workshops with people one to one as well, or one to many as well, I tell them one thing: watch out for those things which are your great things which you lost in your childhood, in your school days. Like
Right.
someone said to this 32-year-old executive, if she's watching this show, that you had a great smile, as
Mm.
something as simple as that.
Mm.
But last 10 years, you've not been smiling. Or someone says, you had a great observation skill, you have a great attention to detail, but
Mm.
suddenly you're hearing feedback from your boss that, listen, you don't have attention to details.
Mm.
So what has changed? And that's why it's not the usual, psychometric test, but it's really saying what has changed, which you were so good at, and
Yeah.
now, and how do you plan your career around building on what you've lost, bringing that back, your
Mm.
strengths, and building on what you've acquired as skills. So merging the acquired skills and the lost skills together. And then A is all about action, because everything we can plan, everything we can assess. I think the 60% or 50%, I believe, and I've heard that many great leaders and readers say that, and authors say that if you have not acted upon it, it's a waste.
Yeah.
So idea is to develop that definitive action plan, the sense of purpose, the definitive true north, resetting your compass,
Yes.
and connecting yourself on the journey, coming back from the, if you're, let's say, sometimes I love analogies. So if you're going on a road from Bangalore to Mysore, or if you're going from Dusseldorf to, far off village in some place in Europe, whatever it is, the point is you may be on a great highway, but somewhere, let's say there's a roadblock, an issue, and you trail off, and the roadblock could be your life event. You lost, like I lost my father somewhere in between. You may lose someone dear one. You may lose, a friend. You may lose some great values. Your job may get hit. Economy
Mm.
may, COVID may can come. A lot of
True.
things change. And that time you trail off on the wooded trail to the left of the highway,
Mm.
and you need to make a comeback to the highway, which
Yeah.
could be a new evolved sense of direction, your true north, as I call it.
Mm.
And that's what this framework helps. That from Q and A and P, the plan is to help you act on it and come back to the highway of your career towards a very successful destination, which can truly, evolve into your success, your own personal success, not what someone else wanted you to be.
Right, right, right. Guys, you should read the book. Pick it up on Amazon, pick it up on other places where it's available. It gives you a fantastic XYZ kind of a quadrant formation where Ashutosh has beautifully given you, he shows you the true North Star there, and you go through a certain deflection at a certain point, and how do you come back to that road and reach that point? It's beautifully depicted. Very, very simple XYZ kind of a quadrant, but I think very, very insightful. So you guys should definitely look up to this particular formula or a framework that he's talking about. Very, very right, Ashutosh. I think you know what I liked in this is APA is definitely powerful, but I think not many even take an effort to sit on this cue itself. That itself becomes so fundamentally important, right?
Yes, we generalize everything in life. That's a problem.
Yeah, and that's a good 1 decade of period you're talking about as different quadrants. And 1 decade is not a small time span.
Yeah,
You can do
yeah,
magic if you can
yeah.
just sit and get that quadrant right.
Absolutely,
Very true. Very,
absolutely.
very true. Very true. If only I had this framework actually those many years back, I could have done certain corrections in my that North Star search. But I'm happy that I'm getting it when I'm in my 40s. I still have a fairly good number of years ahead of me. I should be able to use this. So thank you as an author. Thank you for helping people like us.
Happy to partner with you, Rajiv. Happy to partner with you.
Absolutely. Very, very simple. I mean, you've not complicated it at all, right? It's just a very interesting framework. And I also like the fact that, as you spoke about the Bermuda Triangle, even if you have the framework, it's very natural for people to get into the frog trap that you call. I may have the framework with me, I may not have the framework with me, but both these individuals may still get stuck into the frog trap. Help us a little understand what is this frog trap and how can somebody who has this framework can actually come out of it easily as against the other one who does not have it.
First of all, Rajiv, I must compliment you. You've really read the book well. So I am seriously impressed with the takeaways you have from the book. Amazing. Frog Trap is one of my favorite chapters. And a lot of readers, if you go on Amazon, you see that a lot of reviews, people have said it's their favorite chapter as well. Um, the story is very simple here. And my apologies to all PETA lovers. There's nothing to do with cruelty on animals, but there's really a analogy here, which is based on what I have checked on research. If you were to put philosophically and theoretically a frog, and don't do this, guys, but just to understand the story behind it, it's a lore. If you understand a frog is an animal or is a being which actually is based on certain level of temperature changes in their own body.
Yeah.
If you put them on a cauldron of water which is on warm and is heating up, the frog is great at readapting to it. Actually, it's
Sure.
amazing. It does not, get uncomfortable. It adapts very quickly. As you turn up the heat a little bit more, the experiment says the frog again readapts to the higher temperature. Great stuff, right? Because the frog is readapting again. And it doesn't get uncomfortable because it's able to just live with that higher temperature. But as you keep moving the flame up and as the temperature keeps going up, the frog actually just keeps readapting to it and does
Right.
not jump out. The time the entire piece reaches the boiling point, it's too late for the frog to jump out.
Mm.
So sometimes strengths of adapting can lead to disastrous consequences as well.
Right,
In
right.
our career, in our lives, and a career both actually, and this is true for life situations as well.
Very much.
You have a certain situation in life, you say, it's okay, I will manage it.
Mm.
You happen to going through a career situation, you say, it's okay, it's a bad situation, I'm being abused at work mentally, let's say, or I'm not being tested intellectually, or
Mm.
I'm not enjoying, there's something telling me that
Mm.
it's not right. And you say, thing goes on to an extent, just like the frog, where the temperature around you in life or in career keeps
Mm.
going up gradually,
Mm.
and you don't realize because you're just adapting to it. You just say
Very
that's
true.
okay.
Correct.
And then it hits the boiling point when you're just too late to jump out. The economy hits you, the career hits you, the life hits you, and you have to go for SOS measures. And the whole point is if you can assess early on,
Mm.
and again I keep going back to my career thermometer, which I developed exactly to this point, and say that which zone am I in? So okay, my career
Yeah.
thermometer says you are in hot zone, warm zone, chill zone, relaxed zone, wherever you are. At least take 5 minutes to understand where you are. And if you know that this is where I am, then
Mm.
you can do something about it. So that's the frog story. And the idea is to not get into the frog trap, because moment we keep readapting, we enter the frog trap, and it's too late to take anything else but to pull out SOS measures. So
Right.
why not? Why to reach that point?
Makes sense. Makes sense because you know what? As I was reading the book and I have it, I'm flipping the pages. what I loved in this is, in your framework, the P that you talk about becomes so fundamentally important that if I plan it early on, I can assess the temperature of the water and plan to jump off. And if I don't do
Completely.
that, I'm going to burn my feet and burn my entire body there.
Completely.
Yeah.
Completely.
Yeah.
Completely.
And I love
And
the
it's very
frog.
important.
Very, very important. I love the frog one, Ashutosh, because after the Eat the Frog of Brain Tracy, I think I've not seen any author bringing frog as a concept into a learning. So thank you for bringing that back. So the moment I read Frog Story, which is the 4th chapter, I said, I just reminded of Eat the Frog of Brain Tracy. So I think frog has got its own lovely meanings that you can bring as he did and you have done in your book.
Yeah, I think there's so much one can learn from nature itself.
Very, very
That,
much.
and it's very easy to learn from nature versus trying to learn
Very,
it
very,
synthetically.
very, very much. And I'm happy to tell you that I did the temperature assessment, and I am very happy that I'm in the chill zone, which means I'm happy as an entrepreneur. My score is -44, which I think is fairly okay. It falls in the -60, -30 zone. I'm fairly good.
That is
So I'm
super.
pretty happy that I'm at -44 somewhere.
Congratulations to you. Actually, very good. But the point is again that before you change the quadrant of life, do it
Yeah.
again.
Oh, absolutely. You're right. Very, very true. Yeah. I mean, I can't become, as you say, you can't get complacent because you are in the chill zone.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's what you're saying. It's important to keep identifying, re-identifying, and keep making those tweak in your work relations and personal relations to find those next level of definition of success. What you say. I think that's a beautifully articulation here. Yeah.
Very
Lovely,
true.
lovely.
Very true.
That takes me to the next one, which was very interesting. I've not read very honestly of somebody talking about something called assessing the temperature of the water today. That was a beautiful thought process. What is that? Which is what you said sometime.
Our ecosystem in life, our
Mhm.
ecosystem in career. I realized when I was talking to doing my research to so many senior executives and mid-level executives that their ecosystem becomes themselves and they become the ecosystem.
Mm.
So check and pause or reflect and pause and say, you know, am I really belonging to the ecosystem the way it's evolving? Or
Mm.
can I lead the ecosystem to evolve into something else? Or is the ecosystem leading me? And that's what the water temperature is about, that if you're led by the ecosystem completely, there'll be, I can guarantee that, I can give it in writing, that some point of time, and I've given it in writing already, that there'll be some point of time in your career, in your life, where you will feel jaded, dismayed, tired, disconnected, disengaged,
Right.
demotivated, because you have not been part of your own ecosystem. You've actually led yourself to be driven by an ecosystem that's external to you.
Very
And the
true.
idea is to find that water temperature, assessing that water temperature, that ecosystem temperature, and say that, what do I need to do about it at different points of time, checkpoints with yourself in your
Mm.
life.
Lovely, lovely. Ashutosh, I'm going to reveal this to you, and I did this without seeking your permission. Apologies if I should have done that. Last week, I was in Bombay and I was making a presentation to the chairman, vice chairman, and the board, which had 13 people. We are working on a culture transformation work for the organization. They are into the business of the jewelry industry, and their culture is going south. And I had a presentation, and luckily, I'd read the book before this travel of mine, and I used the assessing the temperature of the water for the entire team. That was a very powerful phrase on the slide when I showed. Have you guys assessed the temperature of the water of the team that you're leading in? And if you're not doing that,
Wonderful.
you can't even take the first step towards making a culture transformation. And I was just
Wonderful.
reminded of you, so thank you so much. It just went like
Uh,
a bullseye in the heads of the leaders, and they said, Rajiv, help us assess the temperature. We said, we'll come back and do something on that. Thank you.
I'm just so delighted to hear that. Thanks to you for leveraging it and using it. So I'm very happy about that. Very happy about that, actually.
Very, very powerful. I mean, it was very insightful. The two concepts that he used, one was the Jim Collins build the clock that he talks
Mhm.
about in the Good to Great book, clock builder concept or a timekeeper concept as leaders he talks about. So these two
That's
learnings
another
were
favorite book.
very
Yeah.
powerful. We had a 45 minutes presentation to the chairman, vice chairman. The two learnings that they said after the talk, they said, Rajiv, two things just hit us very hard. Clock building, are we clock builders? And second, are we assessing the temperature of the water? These two were the biggest learnings for them in that 45 minutes of presentation I made. So thanks to you.
Superb, superb. I think great concept by Jim as well. I love that one too. So kudos for you to bringing it so beautifully out for your client. It's amazing. It's amazing.
Thank you. Thank you. That takes me to the next question that says crossing the bridge. And as you put the four zones and the quadrants, all of us keep crossing that bridge all through the life. What are the top three things that you feel leaders should be focusing on or keep in mind as they come to the crossing bridge point?
See the bridge here. Imagine for a moment a visual of a bridge, which is like this rope bridge hanging between two cliffs, and you have to walk across from one cliff to the other cliff.
Yeah, the Lakshman Jula types.
Exactly, the Lakshman Jula types. Bang on, right? Now, what's very important for the bridge to be stable and for you to not have the fear of crossing? What is the bridge here, first of all? The bridge is going back to the framework, you have defined your sense of purpose. You've agreed, you understood this is your journey, but there'll be lots of innate fears.
Right.
And I've given a lot of examples of them in the book and also done some interviews where people get very fearsome, afraid, of moving their feet when action comes. And that's why action is so important.
Yeah.
But what really happens is three elements to it, like you said. One is the Lakshman Jula, like you said, the rope bridge, if the other end is not tied to something which is firm, you'll be afraid that the bridge will fall down.
Very true.
So point number one, therefore, is in that analogy, ensure that the cliff on the other side, which you're building for yourself, is tall, tight, strong, and holding itself. Only then fasten your bridge across, because otherwise you'll be afraid. It'll give you jitters to cross across. Don't even attempt it.
Can you give me an example of the cliff of the other side? Give me one example.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, for example, if someone wants to move from the two or three kinds of movement in life, right? One is having a great career, suddenly starts feeling jaded, bored, disconnected, and finds within the same organization another career trajectory which keeps him or her excited. Like I was talking to a very senior leader, and the example is in the book of a motor company in the US. And this leader was great at, engineering around manufacturing, building the product. But his heart did lie in being a product and a creative guy.
Okay.
Now, his organization never allowed him to move because he was so good at what he was doing already. So they said, we can't lose you from here and you can't go there. But he said, I'm getting bored here. I'm doing this for 20 years now, or 15 years now, and I want to start doing something else. So we were having a dialogue at that point of time, and I suggested to him, and that was the time I was researching a book and talking to him in the US. And he said, okay, let's do this way. Why don't you go and talk to your board or your partners and say that, guys, I want to do that as an internship almost, the creative engineering, the product engineering piece, without losing sight of what I do today.
Okay.
And at times, your organization has the flexibility, it allows you to do that. So he did that. And lo and behold, today, Rajiv, he is the head of product engineering for his company. He made that transition. So the point is, the A to B transition trying to make sure the B is rock solid and you build that B for yourself. You to own yourself.
Good example.
Second is your financial situation. If you're stepping outside the organization or into a entrepreneurial journey in a business, very important you have 12 to 18 months at least, and you are an entrepreneur yourself, you know this, of financial planning done, or your spouse is bringing in income, so that you don't get to the jitters of failing on the way if something goes wrong, because you can fail, but it's not to say that you can lose, you can still win. But the idea is to be ready for that failing so you can win again. And the third piece is, which is again to the cliff thing, is very important, that your rope itself, the bridge itself, needs to be solid on fundamentals. It can't be on just dreams.
Mm.
And that's the idea that going back to the skills which I spoke about earlier in the conversation, if the bridge is based on that, there's no way you cannot make a solid crossover on this bridge of fear, like I call it. So if you can cross the bridge of fear, you achieved it. You really arrived in your life. You really managed to
Very
hit
true.
the point of your Everest, your peak. That's how
True.
I would like to
True. True.
define it.
And I'm going to give you a high five from here. Thank you for this. I'll tell you, Ashutosh, I'm going to call this out to all the young leaders, guys. And why I'm repeating that this is a, I would not call it a book, I'll still call it a workbook. Because before coming on this talk with Ashutosh, I got the book ordered very early because I wanted to read it and try it and see how it works for me. And I gave you examples earlier in the talk that I tried it for myself on the QAPA framework. I tried on the assessing the temperature bit and I tried on the crossing the bridge. And the three elements you said just sits bang on in my life, Ashutosh. I looked at a 20-month runway of financial stability before I moved into entrepreneurship. And me and my wife had a visibility of 20 months, and she's working with an organization. So I knew there's a steady income coming in, plus 20 months of visibility. I said, this is the time to move. Fantastic.
Yes.
Two, it was also triggered by some kind of an adversity that happened earlier. And I remember
Hmm.
Jeff Keller's Attitude is Everything book, where he says, one of the powerful lessons
Yes.
he says is, adversity can always bring, if not more, an equal opportunity.
100%.
So that was one
Beautifully.
move into my entrepreneurship. Two, I knew that the other side is all about building an entrepreneurship based organization that can add value to the space of LNOD for organizations and communities. So that was very firm on the other side, which means there was no looking back to getting back to the corporate world if at all I lose. With a very fundamental belief, as they say in the defense, that you always march forward, you don't march backwards.
Of course.
That was the second one that sat beautifully. Coming to the strength of the bridge itself, my fundamentals were very clear that I'm not going to be starting an organization which is the 11th consulting firm where there are 10 already doing something. I said this has to be India's only book-based leadership consulting house, which is core to my passion of being a book lover. Today, with
And it is.
journey, it just sits beautifully. So thank you for these three elements. Again, thank you. It was
No,
beautiful.
and I would clap for you for living that journey for yourself because you are unique in a lot of ways from whatever I've heard. And it's an amazing thing you're doing out there. So kudos to you as well, Rajiv. Absolutely.
Yeah, this framework just gave me clarity and telling me that Rajiv, you're doing what you're doing and you're doing something right. It gives you the confidence to just move on. So somewhere by this crossing the bridge concept, you have also instilled the confidence in me that you know what, Rajiv, continue in doing what you're doing and don't look back.
Yes. Yes. I would absolutely say because I can see that, uh, and I'm not being super ambitious about it or trying to fool you here, Rajiv, but the journey you're on, why should you not dream big? And into a, let's not put a number to it, but into a multi-X, dollar firm. And why not? Because the idea is that your journey is unique. You already have taken care of the three key aspects and you have a vision right now which is burning inside you, and I can see that when I spoke to you first. So kudos to you. And absolutely, I'm right a call away. If you ever want to use me as a
Thank
sounding
you.
board,
I will,
always there.
I will, I will. Thank you so much for that,
Yeah, yeah.
Ashutosh. It brings back to the fact that drives you is contributing to the community. So thank you so much. It was a lovely, lovely conversation. I'll go on and on, but the format allows me to bring you to the last question. So with all the 25 plus years of experience, Ashutosh, plus the author that you are, if I can squeeze all of that and put it into a small glass, what are two razor sharp advices that you would give the young leaders?
That's a very tough question, and I'll try to, as I like to do, make it very simple. Number one, own your career. Don't blame others for your career. Don't blame others for your life. Own your life, own your career. That's the only mantra which will make you succeed like never before.
So,
Own it completely. It's your baby. Own it beautifully. Number two, I would say is enjoy what you own.
mm,
Because when you're enjoying the journey, when you're enjoying the work, you do better.
mm,
When you do better, you actually get recognized. When you get recognized, you get motivated. When you get motivated, you do even better.
yeah,
When you do even better, you become a global authority on it or regional authority on it. When
true.
you become an authority on it, you start contributing. to yourself in a different way from a learning curve standpoint. And the journey
Beautiful.
becomes a self-fulfilling, successful prophecy of huge success. So that's my second one.
Thank you. That was bullseye. Thank you so much, Ashutosh, for coming on this event and talking on this book. I thoroughly enjoyed this conversation and I hope you had a good time as well.
I had a lovely time. It was one of the best conversations I've had for a long time, Rajiv. So amazing. Thanks for doing this and appreciate me on your show. Really good. Thanks for having me here.
Pleasure. So I'm going to close this by asking you, do you want to share the giveaway that you want to talk about, a surprise that you have for all the readers? Do you want to announce that?
Yes,
Go on.
yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So, one good news, everyone, because I thought Rajiv has done such an amazing thing, which is on to, I wanted to make it even more special today. That along with Rajiv's conversation, I'm going to give him a form to put along with the post. And the first 30 readers or listeners who sign up on that form will get my book free. Absolutely. And this is not any pin-ups or hang-ups around it, just my love for the fact that I can be of service to you. So, and the great show Rajiv is on. So absolutely that's there. And second is for those who are listeners, I'm very happy to tell you that a lot of people like to listen to books these days. So the book is out now last week. It's already become a bestseller on Audible, Amazon, the US. It's coming on Audible India very soon. It's available on all the listing channels. Just search audiobook, my name, or Breakthrough on Google, and you'll find a bunch of options there. Or you can go to my website and figure it out. Or if you want to listen free to my book, you can just go to my website and click on the audiobook, and you'll get a free chapter listening and then a free listening beyond that through different channels. So, love to share that with you.
Fantastic, fantastic. So we're going to post this on LinkedIn. The form will be soon up there, and all the crazy book lovers who came on this show, I would urge all of you to pick up. And I already know who those top 20 of them would grab the book. So let's do that. Thank you so much once again, Ashutosh, coming on the event. It was a pleasure and an absolute joy having a conversation with you. You have a
Likewise,
lovely day
Rajiv.
ahead.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Bye bye.
Bye.